We are going to be breaking down the logistics of everyone's favorite idea, a rebuild.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess, and thank you so much for joining me here today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Now let's jump right into things. Today, I am joined by James Johnson of the Win Column. And we're going to talk all about the wonderful state of the Flames and the roadmap to hope and success. JJ, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, Jess, and thanks for having me back on. It's always a pleasure to be on Locked On Flames. I love what you guys got going on and all your fun graphics and stuff. You guys are definitely ahead of the game, so it's good to be back.
Well, thank you so much. For those of you who might not be on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, JJ is very analytical minded, and he definitely approaches things from, you're obviously a big fan of the team. Like, that's, if you're watching on YouTube, that's not a green screen behind him. Those are jerseys and hats and sticks. Like, they're all there. But rather from the emotional aspect of a fan, of just like wanting to ride through a season, you're looking at the long-term picture here. And why does a rebuild make sense right now?
Yeah, and just kind of Flames fandom related, like obviously love the team to death and have been a fan of them for years, but why I think a rebuild kind of makes sense is the team currently, and why I'm not emotionally invested in this team is they're just so uninteresting, for lack of a better word, that, like, not to be mean, obviously the players are, I'm sure, like, fantastic people, whatnot, whatever, but like just as a whole, so uninteresting that I think it's time to just kind of scrap things and try again, because you cover this team every day, and I'm sure people listening are fans of the team and watch their games and stuff. And if you can be excited about whoever scoring a goal for the Flames this season, like, shout outs to you. Myself personally, like, I just don't care anymore. And yeah, as you said, I'm just focused on the long-term picture, because that's the only thing that kind of excites me anymore about this team.
Yeah, and I feel like this has just been the constant state of the Flames in the last almost 4 calendar years that I've covered them. Has it been like this your entire life?
Pretty much. Like, I'm still a youngin at 22, so kind of when I first started watching the Flames, they still had Ginla and Kiprusoff, and obviously I'm too young to remember the 04 run, but kind of like things were kind of in the dark years in like 09 and 010, where you had this really good right winger who's now a Hall of Famer, and you had a really good goaltender, but you could never get a first line center. And some years you were in it, some years you weren't, and then you finally trade again. You don't trade Kiprusoff, but he retires. You trade Bouwmeester, and you try to do a rebuild, and then you get Gaudreau and Monahan and all these guys, and then it's kind of the same old story where you have 1 year where you're really good, and then you get swamped by Edmonton in the playoffs. But other than that, it's been kind of good, kind of bad, usually in the middle. So yeah, it's unfortunate.
Definitely. And I was thinking, like, when I was putting this episode together, I was thinking about how the narrative of the Flames, quite literally, like almost all of Johnny's tenure, was, oh, he took Calgary out of his bio on Instagram, or, oh, he randomly left the ice day of the trade deadline. It's happening. It's happening. Do you think that they made a mistake by not blowing up the core? I mean, I would say like there were a lot of conversations like 2020, 2021 with Monahan, Gio, Chuck, and Gaudreau.
I would say they definitely should have explored it years ago, and you would have been in a far better position than you are right now. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But for myself personally, kind of after the Flames lost to Colorado in 2019, and like I was there for game one, like luckily in the Saddledome, and the Flames won. And then they didn't win a game after that, and they lost in 5. And it was just like Colorado, faster, more skilled, just completely, well, McKinnon, really. McKinnon and McCarr just bullying us for 4 games. And I just kind of thought, like this team had for years, and at that point had some good players, but no elite players. And we didn't really see an elite Johnny Gaudreau or Matthew Tkachuk until the 2020-2021 season. I believe that was the summer they were really good. Yeah. Like we didn't really see. Yeah, it was either that or 2021, 2022. I don't know. All the years are everything's the same now.
I came into covering the team right before the pause in 2020, and that was the year, or the season after they had lost to Colorado. And it was just like everyone kept saying in the locker room, "Oh, we're ready. Like we're not that team anymore. We're better." And then the same thing happened the next year, and the year after that, and then you make the playoffs and lose to Edmonton, and you miss the playoffs, and now you're here. And it's like, we're such a better team. And no, not really. There's definitely not even, there's no argument to be made there. And I'm sorry to all the fans that are holding out hope and kind of, I appreciate anyone that can stick through horrible seasons of any sport, especially hockey, with it being 6 months long. Yeah. So, we all survived last year, and I feel like we can get through that. We can get through 3 years of bad hockey, but good draft picks. And that's what it takes to win. And we're going to talk about that next. Coming up next, we are going to take a second to talk more about the Flames rebuild coming up next. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers Stay Hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get up to $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about FanDuel and getting in on the action, there's no better time to join. The app is super easy to use, and there's a wide variety of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And my favorite part is that you can cash out instantly. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Alrighty, well, thanks everyone for hanging out with us today on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast, and of course on YouTube as well. Where does the Flames start? Was trading Toffoli any sort of domino nudging?
It's what they should be doing in trading a guy that's over the age of 30 or past his prime and not giving him a long-term extension and trading him for a younger player or draft picks or a combination of both. Now, I'm kind of in the mind that like Yegor Sharangovich has been good and no complaints there with the trade, but I'm kind of the mind of why not just trade Toffoli for like maybe a late first or an early second and then kind of fill that forward spot with somebody else. Like Sharangovich has been fine and all like on the guy, but I'm more of the mind of, again, like tear this thing to the ground, right. Like in the sense of that, like just getting a draft pick back, I think would have made more sense. I guess a higher draft pick, I should say. And yeah, it's definitely, we've seen Zadorov now ask out, Oli kind of asked out-ish, just didn't get a contract offer. Same thing with Zadorov, didn't get a contract offer. So it's good. Flames management isn't just handing out blank checks like somebody else did before we left. But it's good to see. But yeah, the Flames should just continue to do this. I was very scared this offseason when it was rumored that Calgary offered Elias Lindholm 8 years at 8.9 or whatever it was, or 9, 8.5, whatever the number was.
A whole lot more money, than all respect to Elias Lindholm, than his ceiling is. Like,
Yeah.
he's not a $9 million player.
And yeah, like he's been as close to a first line center as the Flames have had in many years. I still don't think he's a first line center personally. He's been a good soldier for Calgary for many years and played a lot of tough minutes. And hopefully Craig Conroy and co make the right decision and deal him in the next 3 months ish or whenever before March 8th. Because if you sign Lindholm and you sign Hannafin to whatever he wanted, 7.5 times 8, which crazy, then you're literally just locking yourself into kind of a New York Islanders mold where you have some good talent, but they're only getting older and you're not winning a whole lot. You're just stuck in the mushy middle, which is where Calgary's been for, well, as long as I can remember, right?
That is a really good way to put it, because I feel like, at least for me, having like a comparable, team. Like, okay, they're not going in the direction of, let's say, a Colorado, where they're getting younger and they have older guys that are still like super talented, but there also is like some youth there. The Islanders are just a bunch of old men with no beards, and they did have some success in the playoffs. They made it to, I think, the Eastern Conference Finals a few times, and just they couldn't make that next step. And the Flames can't even take the first step, let alone truly end up in a competitive situation. But who are some pieces that you would build around?
A good question. And like I don't want to be rude and say no one, because obviously you need to have people around and there's good players on this team, but there's really nobody that I like look at and I'm like, this is the guy, right? Like obviously you're gonna hold on to Connor Zary and probably everybody under the age of like 25, right? Because you don't trade young players in a rebuild. That doesn't make sense. At the same time, you need veterans around the team, right? Like there's no good team in the league that doesn't have a veteran presence. So whether it's guys that are locked up for a century in Jonathan Huberdeau and like that, if he's characterized as a veteran guy, like you're kind of stuck with him at this point. By all indications, he's a great teammate and a guy to have around. And we obviously saw that with Pelche last year. Maybe he's a good veteran and keep him around. Guys like Kadri that are here for many years, although it's been rumored that if the Flames decide to go down that route, Kadri would be interested in it, which makes sense. The guy wants to win. All the power to him. You have a guy like Blake Coleman, who I think has been the most consistent Flame all season from the games that I've watched. And he's under contract for another 3.5 years. If he wants to stick around, I'd love to have him in the room. If he wants to win, you try to make that work too, right? Same thing with Weegar. Like, love the guy, want him to stick around. But again, like I don't really want anybody to stay here if they don't want to, right? Like,
right. That's been the conversation, I feel like, since last season ended, was if you don't want to be here, let someone know and we will help you pack your bags.
Exactly.
Because there's no point in you staying in an environment that you're not happy in. I mean, how many people leave their normal 9-to-5 jobs because of an unhappy environment? They're not liking the results they're seeing from their work and their coworkers. So they find a new environment to go. Okay, great. Now, this is obviously a little bit more complicated because there's contracts and clauses and money involved. But if you are unhappy, the door's open. Like, Craig Conroy has made it clear since day one, like, you don't have to stay. We don't want hostages. This isn't, if you want to stay, great. We will do what we can. And if you appreciate the vision, I don't think they know what the vision is at this point. But if you are okay with just riding a roller coaster and having a bunch of buddies in the locker room, then all right, well, we'll give you a letter and call it a day. But there are players where I'm okay if they just if they walk.
On a similar tone, you're almost okay with them walking because, especially for veteran guys like Chris Tanev, it's like you're not getting younger. I know he said in the media that he thinks he can win here, and if they want to believe that in the room, that's awesome. Like, that's the mindset they're supposed to have. Personally, I wouldn't be putting money on it. I don't even think they're going to make it the playoffs, although they'll probably be like 3 points out like last year and ruin everybody's day. It'll be awesome. But yeah, like, especially like a guy like Backlund, right? Where as soon as he signed his extension, I tweeted out a meme and it was like, this means Backlund wins a cup in his career, right? Like,
yeah,
it's
he wants to
awesome.
win.
It's awesome that he wants to stick around and be the captain of the team, and like, it's awesome to have him and love the guy. But at the same time, it's like you go to Colorado or Carolina or Toronto, all these teams that have a better shot of a cup, and it's like, I kind of want that just for these guys, right? Where you root for them, and maybe it's just the best if they move on, and for both parties, really.
Yeah, and there's no point in holding all this animosity. It's not like it is Johnny Gaudreau or Matthew Tkachuk saying, bye. Like, no, these, while they are wonderful human beings, they are not the same caliber player. If Chris Tanev says, July 1st or whatever, hey, like, Toronto's offering me 3 years or 2 or 3 years at like $5 million or whatever, I'm going there. And I don't think the Flames would counter offer Toronto at that point. I would hope not, because that's 34.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different story. And then we have the goaltending situation too. What are we doing? What is the vision? What is your vision for the goaltending?
I tweeted out a few days ago and I was like, maybe Markstrom's the guy that you move instead of Vladar, because I mean, for the past year, it's been, Dan Vladar, when is he going? And I feel bad for the guy because I think he's like seems like a super cool guy, but it's just the fans don't necessarily like you because there's the crown jewel in Dustin Wolf that you're kind of taking a spot from, right? So I think a tandem of Vladar and Wolf makes sense for a rebuilding team. Like, you have your 25-year-old guy that's might be something, might be like a 1A, 1B guy, and then you have what could be the next UC Saros or a bust, and it's time for you to find that out. And it would be nice if you could move Jacob Markstrom's contract. With the way he's playing right now, he's literally stealing you games, like against Florida last Saturday or Monday or whatever that was. And from his perspective as well, right? Like, this is a super competitive guy, signed here, expecting to win. He's not getting any younger. Maybe he wants to go to New Jersey. They want a goalie. Carolina's looking at a goalie. Like, there's teams out there, even like LA, if you really want to go crazy. Like, just this thing of these guys aren't getting younger. If they want to believe they can win in Calgary and stay here, like, all the power to them. But if you're being realistic, I don't think you can look at this team and their track record in the Huberdeau, Kadri, Weegar era, which is at 110 games now, 105, whatever it is. And you have a team that isn't bad, but it's not good.
Yeah. And that is the general consensus from people I talk to, like, that are involved in the Flames sphere in some way, and then people who are just hockey fans. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot Calgary was a thing. It's like, it's okay. Sometimes they do too. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Or they're like, they have that, oh yeah, no, they've just been like middle of the pack for the last 20 plus years, and there's no climbing out. But we are going to talk about rebuilds, idea of what a successful rebuild looks like, and some examples coming up here right after this. But first, let's take a break and talk about Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to get tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I love Game Time because of those flash deals. I can get last minute tickets up to an hour after the event starts. So if you're someone that's running perpetually late, guess what? Game Time has you covered. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. That is the best place to find last minute seats. And you can find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you everyone for hanging out with us on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Make sure you are following the Win Column on X and reading all of the work that they put out. There's a lot of good stuff over there. When I say successful rebuild, recent successful rebuilds, I guess I should say, who comes to mind?
I guess like there's two, and they're kind of both in the New York area. So I don't know if that's kind of just recency bias because I was watching Edmonton and New Jersey a little bit yesterday, but obviously you have the Rangers who put out a letter to their fans and said, hey, we're not good enough. We're going to tear this thing to the ground and get younger. You trade Zuccarello and all these guys. You say goodbye to Rick Lundqvist and Igor Shesterkin, and then you win the draft lottery for Lafreniere. You draft Capo Caco second overall, and you trade for a young Adam Fox and yada, yada, yada. Ryan Lindgren. Like, we can name names all day, but that's a team that they kind of took a look in the mirror and said, look, we tried. We're not good enough. We're getting old. Let's tear this thing to the ground. And then you have New Jersey, kind of similarly-ish. They did luck out with a couple draft lotteries, and they won the one for Nico Hischier. You have Jack Hughes, Luke Hughes, Simon Nemec, like all these incredible talents, Jesper Bratt, and they're all like 22. It's insane.
They're children.
And they're all like Bratt, Hischier, Meyer, Dougie Hamilton, like all these guys are locked up for years, and they're only going to get better with age. And you have some younger guys, or some older guys, and Andre Palat coming in and guys like that for veteran presence. And it's like, I would put my money on New Jersey winning a cup in the next 5 years. Like, it might not be this year, but I certainly like their chances over every team in this league probably to win a cup in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And you have like the Oilers, who were garbage for so many years, and it was fun to laugh at them. And then now they have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and although they have gotten off to a rough start this year by PDO and stuff, like I fully expect them to be in the playoffs, unfortunately, and like they could realistically beat any team, and their goaltending is subpar and their defense is subpar, but you have a franchise talent and an elite talent on the same team. Like, you realistically can beat anybody. I'm a little jealous.
So what you're saying is I get those kind of guys. They're not just going to fall into your lap in free agency or really at the trade deadline or anything, because just the way money works and the way that kind of the age when it comes to free agency and whatnot. What do the Flames need to do? They don't have to win the draft lottery or anything like that. Like, let's say.
Yeah, just a stat on like the whole you need to draft high. I was arguing with somebody earlier this year when the Flames were really bad, and I looked, they were like, oh, you don't need a top 3 pick to win a cup. And I like looked at just every team that's won over the past, I can't remember if it was 15 or 20 years. Yeah. But I remember 10 of the past 15 cup winners have had a first overall pick.
Wow.
And every team has had top 3 picks or multiple top 3 picks. Now, not every pick works out. You could get Nail Yakupov, or you could get David Pastrnak in the second round. I believe Boston drafted him in the second.
I know, that sounds right.
And that's the thing with drafting, is if you devote your scouts and trust your scouts and they do their homework, you do your homework, it really doesn't matter where you draft. as long as you, one, I mean, keep your picks and don't trade them, please.
Yeah.
And just trust your scouts and try to get as many draft picks as possible, because you're literally throwing a dart at the dartboard and hoping for a bullseye. And the more darts you have, the more likely you're going to hit a bullseye. So again, like whether the Flames are drafting, I mean, right now I think they're drafting 9th overall,
Not
or
bad.
I'm guessing they're going to kind of turn it on and they'll finish 15th or whatever. No matter where they're drafting, it's important that, one, you trade your Noah Hannafins, your Elias Lindholms, Chris Tanev, all these UFAs, even guys that are under contract like Nazem Kadri, if you can make that work, and you stockpile young players and draft picks, and you just try, one, to luck out and hit maybe a franchise player. Two, just get a bunch of good players or NHL players, because that's the entire kind of point of the draft, right? Is getting NHL talent for your roster. And that's going to be talent that's under team control for whatever, 8 years or however long guys are under team control for. I forget.
8 years or until they're 27.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, no, it's time to start stockpiling those draft picks. Arizona did it. I mean, there's a reason why people joked and called them money launderers. I mean, if the Flames want to start acting like that in around the trade deadline, sure. I mean, I don't think anyone's fully discouraging selling versus buying.
And yeah, like if the Flames choose to do a retool as opposed to a rebuild, like I'm not going to complain. Like if I personally believe you should take this down to the studs and trade guys like, even talk about trading guys like Rasmus Andersson and get kind of crazy, because his next contract he's going to be 30, and sign him long term. You're paying him what, 30 to 37 or something like that. Anyway, that's just one example. But like if they choose to retool and they trade Hannafin, Lindholm, Tanev, and a couple other guys and try to move forward, well, Nashville kind of did something similar last year, and look at them now. They are, if you haven't noticed, ahead of the Calgary Flames.
Yes, that Matt Duchene buyout did them a lot of favors and didn't do the Flames any. But there's so much to learn. The NHL is absolutely a copycat league. And while the Flames don't have any buyout-friendly contracts, maybe they can shift some money elsewhere, because they can't keep it all and be successful. But I think that does it for today's episode. Thank you so much, JJ, for joining me here. Where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, so if you like kind of subpar memes and a little bit of analytics thrown in there, and I'll say rational thinking, but people like to disagree with that. So you can find me on Twitter or X or whatever they're calling it now at James Johnson YYC. I also write things for the Win Column, which is the wincolumn.ca, or at wincolumncgy on X. So that's all the goodies.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. And I will be back tomorrow or later this week, whenever this episode goes up.